Azerbaijan, live on Off the Ball.
And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 7 on this extended show because we got live commentary of the Republic of Ireland's game against Azerbaijan from Lansdowne Road with Stephen Doyle and Stuey Byrne in the commentary box. Johnny Ward in studio with me. And Stewie, as a former Shelburne, Pat Strada midfielder, I'm just interested in Josh Cullen because Stephen Kenny kind of feels that he's quite pivotal right now and he seems to be the number one man in that centre position at the moment.
I agree. I was fairly drawn to him the other night when I was commentating on the game. I was just kind of having a really good look at him because I felt he had an extremely difficult role. Of all the Irish players, I think he had probably one of the most difficult one. The fact of the matter was that he was playing in a that sort of central position just in front of the back four, back five, whatever. But because Portugal had so many players like Ronaldo, Fernandes that kind of play in the pocket, they were constantly drifting in around him all the time. So we effectively had to play the game, with eyes in the back of his head, sort of stuff. So you're always on the half turn. You're always aware of who's on your shoulder. You're constantly. You have to multitask in that position because you have to see what's ahead of you, what's going on in the game. But you have to have an awareness of what's off your shoulder. You have to be listening to the communication that's coming at the same time. So it can be all very overwhelming. So I thought he did it excellently. I think he has a very good head on his shoulders. He's a very good understanding of that position of the game. But when he gets the ball back, I think his use of the ball, especially in that first half, was top drawer. I mean, how many times did you see him with the outside outside of the right foot pass? So comfortable doing. I think he did it 2 or 3 times in the first half, and he made it look easy. So he was very calm, very collected. So I think he's a key player for us.
It's interesting, JD, as well. He's 25, and he's been such a peripheral figure. Your old buddy Wezo, Stewie, obviously it took him a long time to establish himself, longer again obviously to get his Ireland cap, but I thought Cullen was like the jury on Hendrick. I mean, can the jury be out at this stage? Like, Hendrick was probably the weakest of the 3 midfielders, but that was a performance. Was it like it was a coming of age performance for Josh Cullen, because we're so infatuated with British football here that we don't really see him playing in Belgium, obviously, and he didn't look at all out of place, I thought, and it was a real I think it was kind of evidence, without going on about Stephen Kenny again, I think it was evidence in Kenny really talking up and trusting in a player and getting kind of the rewards from it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he wouldn't have been. I mean, I know he had Hendrick in beside him the other night, and it's almost like he was the senior guy in there. I think he just has that aura about him. He understands that role to a T. It may well be the fact that he's been playing in Belgium or playing on the continent that's allowed him to maybe get a better understanding of that role. Because a lot on the continent you play with a lot of players in that position. I don't know, but to me anyway, he certainly looked like he was calm, collected. He never overrushed, never panicked. An older Irish team, I felt, if you take the first half the other night, what did we see happen? Portugal were squeezing us. They were squeezing the pie, but they weren't getting back. They weren't doing any recovery runs. But what we did very well tonight was we were calm in possession when we went forward. We didn't rush it. We didn't overpass. We kind of played ourselves out of trouble, and we were able to get up the pitch on more than one occasion in the first half. I think in the past we would have made. We would have rushed it forward. We would have looked to maybe knock it in behind for a Shane Long to run into, and then we all charge up the pitch and that kind of stuff. I just felt there was a different dynamic about the Ireland team, a different. There was a calmness about us, more of an understanding maybe. But it's useless if it's only going to be the one game. It has to be a regular thing, and I think the Irish crowd have to be able to see that on a regular basis, and that's probably why this game is hugely important.
Just if you're joining us, the team news for the game against Azerbaijan. We have Gavin Bazunu in goal, Seamus Coleman, Shane Duffy and John Egan. Looks like a back 3 with Matt Doherty and James McLean making that a 5. Josh Cullen and Jason Malumbi, and then we got Aaron Connolly, Troy Parrish and Adam Ida. Adam Ida the other night, well, talking about players coming of age, it was if Daniel Farke was watching, I'd say he was very impressed.
Yeah, I think again another one that is progressing all the time. For such a big, strong physical presence, he's quite nimble. He's very dynamic. He's not overly aggressive. He's not one of these that it goes and sticks an elbow into or whatever. He's hold of play was excellent on occasion the other night. Again, when we needed to get out, and he was surrounded by 2-3 players. He was drawn in fouls, and he had again another one that had that sort of that calmness about him for 19 years of age. I mean, it's just crazy. We have to remind ourselves how young these guys are, and that the potential that they have. I mean, these guys have another 15 years in them, at least, when you think about it like that. So it really bodes well for what's currently happening, for the dynamic that's happening at the moment with Jim Crawford's under 21s, the fact that Stephen had been with the under 21s. There's a continuity now starting to happen between the underage teams coming right through to the senior team. It takes time. You have to stick with it. You have to be patient. And I know you're getting an awful lot of text there and messages that would to the contrary, but that's always going to happen. People, you have to be brave. You have to have a brave manager that's going to stick with this, and Stephen will do that. He'll stick with it, and if it works, if it doesn't work, then the time we'll know when it's not working, and things will probably change then. But I think there's loads more legs in this yet.
Yeah, and a lot of personalities that just haven't emerged yet or haven't come through, because like he does, club career, obviously those goals that he got, against Preston, you were thinking, he's going to kick on, and for Connolly it's kind of stuttered a bit, and he probably hasn't had the best off season. Troy Parrott has had to go out in a second loan to get going. I don't know. I mean, I spoke about this in the first half. Were you watching the 21s, Stewie, and just when you see some of the play, like the likes of Evan Ferguson, you're just like, oh my God, like some of these players, if they really click. Evan Ferguson could well be playing for the Ireland senior team within 2 or 3 years, even though he's only 16, the size of him, like.
Yeah, that's it. And that's why I think it's important that that the message gets out there, that we constantly, we speak about this, that there's a continuity here. There's a plan in place to bring players through, whether it be Tom Moan or Paul Ozam, all working at underage level. They're all working, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and they're bringing these players through. And you rightly point out, Johnny, the 21s, if we had a fabulous 21s under Stephen Kenny. We have just as good a 21s team now under Jim Crawford. You probably don't get to see them as much as we would like to see them, but they're coming through. You've got 4 or 5 players in that team that could be good enough to get to be knocking on the door of the senior team. So again, that will happen. It's just a matter of sticking with it. Just to be patient, really.
Yeah, if the senior team beat Bosnia 2-0 away from home, you'd go, that's a good result. Although we got a few more, contrary texts on 53106 here. Astonishing to listen to the continuing Stephen Kenny love-in echo chamber here. Just to say, clearly there's a significant cohort of supporters who clearly and frankly, with great justification, given our appalling results since his appointment, regard the Kenny appointment as arguably the worst in the history of Irish football, thanks to John Delaney.
So let me come in there. In fairness, it's not a Stephen Kenny love-in, right? Because the reality is there are other managers out here that could do the exact same thing, okay? But he's the right man for now. He's the right man for now. He understands it. But if it doesn't work out, then there are other people that can come in and still try and play good football, bring through youth. It's not black or white. It's not Stephen Kenny or else go back to lumping it forward. So I think it's important that we articulate that.
Well, yeah. So like I was reared on Euro 88, Italia 90, in those times. Obviously, I didn't know a good football game from a bad football game, but I would laud Stephen Kenny for, it was on Eamon Dunphy's podcast, and I can't remember when it was, but he freely acknowledged
the Charles Hughes way wasn't the way.
Yeah, he didn't. Stephen Kenny didn't go to Ireland games, he said, because he didn't enjoy the way that they played. And Eamon Dunphy obviously called out Jack Charlton famously in that Egypt game, and I think Eamon said subsequently that you couldn't really call out Jack. Jack was like a complete national hero. Now Jack brought totally different aspects, like an absolute legend of a man in many respects. He brought different aspects in terms of pressing and all that. But you go back to the 1974 game against the USSR, Liam Brady's debut, and in many of the boring nights during the pandemic when they showed some classic games, that came on. And I could not get over that in 1974 we were playing a far, far more attractive brand of football than effectively we did for many of the years from the late 80s up until the appointment of Stephen Kenny. And I don't want to be associated anymore with a country that it sees itself as being unable to play football, and it's all about set pieces and heart and all that, because we shouldn't be like that. We love football in this country, but we also love to see proper football played, and I think we have to move away from that. Stephen Kenny is not trying to reinvent the wheel. He just wants us to have faith that we can play breathtaking attacking football like Dundalk even did at times against very good teams in Europe.
That's a very good point. I think with Charlton, when you're getting there, when you're in the top 8 teams at a tournament, when everybody, remember, like, we know sporting success really as a nation for 50, 60 years since independence that we could all go to. You can't go to Gaelic games outside of Ireland. The rugby team is amateur. Olympics is a TV event. So when you're going to Germany, when you're going around Hanover and Gelsenkirchen and Stuttgart, and then you're going to Italia 90, that's a huge part of it. And then being in the top 8 in the world and being in the top 8 in Europe. But in the last 10 to 15 years, where it's all been about like Trapattoni not being interested in the League of Ireland at all, you'd have press conferences on the same day, big games. We would get there in 2012, but it was an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Euro 2012 was an absolute disaster of caveman football.
And it was, JD, and you couldn't rely indefinitely on, like, obviously Jack Charlton got players through the grandparents' rule and all that. We couldn't rely on the lack of football industry, and the lack of success of the League of Ireland has been a scandal, really. And it's been a scandal that we've had to send kids away from their home at really, really young ages to get any sort of a football education. And this was just seen as par for the course. That's not good enough anymore. And now with the Brexit situation, we have a couple of squads now in Turner's Cross, Colin O'Brien squads that are effectively almost entirely home-based, apart from Kevin Zeffy and maybe one other player. We have to have, even the under-21s, we had 2 players from Bows playing and a Bray Wanderers keeper playing yesterday. We have to move away from the days of we can just rely on the lads in England, because we can't anymore, and that's been obvious from the lack of Premier League players that we have at the moment.
Well, it's also important because the Premier League is now a global league, and the Premier League is a much bigger thing than it was 30 years ago, when you had all Irish players in Liverpool winning championship winning teams. You had Damien Duff winning the Premier League with Chelsea. Jamie McGrath went to Maynooth University, plays in Scotland for St Mirren, played the other night. Josh Cullen, we just spoke about there, Stewie plays for Anderlecht. We had a lot of players coming out of the League of Ireland, and these players in the under-21s could be in the national team. We just maybe have to have a different approach and a different route for a lot of these players to go. The under-21s we had yesterday, that they might be playing football in Holland or Germany or Italy or in the Championship, and that's just a little bit of a different way than it was in the past.
Or here, and I think there has to be buy-in from everybody. People need to kind of maybe have a broader look at things. What's really the why can't we have a stronger domestic league? Why there should be more regular players from League of Ireland getting into these squads. We've got players here playing in Europe regularly. Look at what happened this year. Huge success in Europe. Sorry, not huge success in Europe, but Dundalk, Bows, Rovers, even though Rovers were disappointing, they were all played extremely well. Bows were in particular, relative to their current scenario, were excellent, and they're only going to get better and better. But there's England's a monster because it's this thing that's just constantly always been there. It's always going to be there. But it's not the answer. We have to be able to kind of stand on our own 2 feet. We have to be able to develop the game here. We have to educate people about why we're so obsessed by England. There's huge historical reasons for this, and it's something that I get quite frustrated by sometimes. I kind of wonder, why are you so obsessed by United or City, or have you ever just think about it for a minute? There's something here. There's an opportunity to be part of something real and something raw, and develop something that's here. A wonderful product here. But it just needs huge buy-in from people, because the perception here is that it's that League of Ireland is in a particular place, but it's not. It's the biggest problem is the infrastructure and the resources and the finances that it has to leverage. But it's not something we're going to answer now. We're obviously getting closer to kick-off, but it's certainly it should be regularly part of the conversation.
Just briefly, JD, what I liked was Keith Ward, who is a really good playmaker for Bohs, got a great goal in Europe last season. I was speaking to him about the Bohs players coming through this year. Young Jamie Mullins, who got a goal at 16, and Keith Ward, who's 30. He said the likes of Dawson Devine, Jamie Mullins, they're doing things now that I just don't think I can do, and that is just it's just progression of young players, and this is happening. I'm not trying to talk about the League of Ireland in this glowing terms, but the young players coming through, they know how to play football. They want to keep the ball on the ground, and that's going to be, why can't our international team do that?
But it's just harder to break into England now. I mean,
much harder.
It's much harder. It's a global league, and it's the top league. You look at Ronaldo going back to Man United. 53106 lads. I'm all for Kenny, but we can't dress everything upwards. Clear from Cullen at Charlton. He was the only one in the top 40 players who understands that midfield role. Should have been trusted earlier to play. Narrative of Belgium has made him suddenly pickable. Is unfair on him. Yes, he's improving as you'd expect. And another one, hi lads, the only point you made that I agree on is Stephen Kenny's afraid of no team that'll win games. They've got great forward and great defenders now, so let's get this 4-0 tonight. We're on our way to a great future. Are the players out there? Have they got back into the dressing room there, Stewie?
No, it's an empty pitch now. Sprinklers are out. I have to say the pitch is probably as best as I've seen. I mean, the pitch is always good here, to be fair, and especially when it comes to September off the back of a good summer.
When did you last play there?
When did I last play?
Deportivo, was it?
Oh, Deportivo, yeah.
That wasn't a bad night.
It wasn't a bad night, yeah.
This lad Wezo was trying to show that he could do a thing or two.
This little kid, he was fancied himself a little bit in the middle of the pitch. I don't know what happened to him in the end. Yeah.
What's the verdict, Stewie? Can we do it?
We can. I'm a bit with Johnny. I just want to really see a positive performance, energy, ball possession, move the ball quick. I think if we do that, goals will come. But I'm not going to sit here and say that I think we'll win this 3-0 4-0. No, I think it will be tight because I think they'll make it awkward. Azerbaijan. I'm more interested in a really positive performance.
Okay, so we'll be back to you in a moment for commentary with Stephen Doyle of the Republic of Ireland against Azerbaijan. Has put him under pressure. Blares through the tannoy there at Lansdowne Road. You can hear it, I'm sure. Johnny, how do you feel? How are you calling it this evening?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to bluff and say I know a lot about Azerbaijan. I've seen their results and they do keep it tight. They don't lose by much, but I think there'll be goals in this. That team, there can't not be goals. It can't be another Luxembourg with the team he's put out. This is much more like a Stephen Kenny team with those three kids up front. I think we'll win by 2 or 3-0.
Okay. Johnny Ward, thanks as always for Football Saturday. Back with you next week. Live commentary of the Republic of Ireland against Azerbaijan is coming up.
Republic of Ireland versus Azerbaijan. Live on Off the Ball.